There we go. Okay. I think that's better now. Let me know if you hear anything. Let's see. Sorry, there was an issue with the mic that I had selected in the program. So I'm back, and I'll just quickly go over what's going on with Art of Composing. Obviously, I kind of, let's just say I kind of burned myself out a little bit last year. I had a lot going on. I was scoring a soap opera. I was doing a ton of stuff, daily vlogs, and on top of it, homeschooling my son. My wife was going to college, and I was basically, when she was at school, watching all my kids all day long. So I just got a little bit burned out, but things have kind of settled down again, and I am back. The biggest news I've got is that I am almost completely done, and I'm just doing some testing on switching over the Academy to brand new course software through Thinkific, and it's like a million times better. It's got a great course player. I'm re-editing the videos in the Music Composition 101 course to make them shorter, make them get to the point quicker. I'm adding new, exercise videos. I'm adding new kind of bonus hidden courses if you sign up, things like composing along with me, adding workouts. So that's all happening behind the scenes. On the front end of things, I plan on starting up the symposiums again. And let me go ahead and get to some questions here. I see. How do you start to write more complex compositions? Well, writing, I would say often things that appear to be complex on the surface are, structured in a way that you've got some core elements that are probably pretty simple underneath that are making it actually work properly. For instance, you could write a melody over something as simple as a one chord, just something kind of plain like that. But then you can take that and mess with it after the fact. I don't remember exactly what I played. That's kind of part of the problem when you're improvising. Often you change little bits here and there. Although that's part of the fun of composing too. Adding things like pedal tones. I'm still thinking of this overall as something I'm doing over a one chord, over right now C major, right? But I'm messing with the kind of details over the harmony, right? And a part of that is stuff that I know is going to work. I know that playing C and then going to a flat 6 is going to have a certain sound, or C going to a major 3 chord is going to have a certain sound. And you learn those things either by listening, reading scores, seeing other composers, or just by messing around. And I don't want to take away the fun of just sitting at the piano and finding cool sounds to mix in with your compositions. Right? As long as you know how to properly resolve things, where overall things should be going, often a composition that appears to be very complex is really simple, right? Really, I'm not thinking how to do a crazy chord progression that has all these intricate things. I'm just kind of messing around over C, and then I'm moving up to F, right? That's kind of my structure that I'm working with. Now, that's like harmonic complexity, right? Thinking simple first and then moving up a step into complexity afterwards. Now, in terms of like compositional design, form, and where the composition's going overall, there's all sorts of techniques you can start to add. These are stuff that I cover in my Composition 201 course on sonata form. But what I call them is based off of William Kaplan's classical form theory. He calls them loosening techniques. They're things like extensions, expansions, interpolations, asymmetrical grouping, little tools that you can modify just, simple 2-measure ideas or 4-measure phrases. If you add a single measure that extends, let's say, a 2-measure idea, we got right. That wasn't exactly clear. I missed my pedal there, but what I did is I just played a simple 2-measure idea, and then I added, right, just a little whatever on top of it, and then I would probably, write another 2-measure idea. So that's an example of extension. I've talked about that quite a bit in previous symposiums, and I'll probably end up talking about it a lot more. But thanks for the question. Anybody else that has questions, go ahead, feel free to post them. Okay, he says, I have problems developing my theme and keeping it going and not just ending on the root. Well, once again, understanding traditional forms can get you out of that quickly. If you write an 8-measure theme, and you know that you want to get away from landing on the root, what you can often do is give yourself a harmonic goal or harmonic target to reach, and then work backwards from it. It's a great way to not get overwhelmed. Sometimes moving forward from a chord, there's too many possibilities, right? If I start with just a C chord, it can literally go anywhere, right? I could play anything. I could play, right? And as long as you know how to resolve or what's causing the tension in it, you know how to get it to go back. But that possibility, right? I could do anything, literally, and that can be crippling, all the possibilities. So let's say that I want to make my way over to A minor, right? Well, I can start to work back from A minor. I'll write this down so I don't get confused here. I know that if I'm ending on A minor, I'm probably going to want to have a 5 leading into that. So that's E7, right? And we probably also want to have some kind of pivot chord. Now, A minor and C major are related, right? That's the relative minor. And that means they share a lot of common chords. So you've got C major is the 3rd in A minor. It's a 3 chord, right? The median. You also have D minor, which is the 4 in A minor, which would lead very nicely here. You could do a D minor, right? And then bring that into A minor. You could probably, you could do a little bit of modal borrowing and have a half diminish, a half diminish B chord right there. Actually, that's not technically modally borrowed either, because it's still that's a 7th chord in C. But right, so I know I want to make it over to this B chord. Now I've got a target. I can, write a simple basic idea, a repetition. Now, if I get to, like, say, a continuation, right? Now I've made my way over to A minor. I didn't have to worry about it so much in the moment because I've already planned it out. I know that if I want to get to A minor, I probably should do at least, some kind of cadence in A minor. But you could do that with any key, and you're not restricted to closely related keys. You can pick something a little bit further out. You could do A flat major, or you could do, D flat major or something like that. Okay, let me move on to the next question. Hopefully that helps to get you in the right direction. Let's see. Miss Amityville asks, I have a problem finding a job as a composer. Well, don't we all? Did some short films for free. How do you look for a job? Are there any websites you would recommend for a composer to contact directors? Well, I don't personally do a lot of contact through websites. I know if you want to find a lot of directors working and the projects as they're getting off the ground online, a great place to check is IMDb. And if you sign up for IMDb Pro, which does cost money, so I'm not going to say like just go do it, but and it's like $100 something a year, so it's not exactly cheap if you're not getting any work for your scoring. But they do list a lot of projects on there in pre-production, and you can start to find stuff that interests you. Look for budgets and creators that are maybe at your level in your career where you feel like you could start to create a good relationship. Often the problem is as directors grow in their career, they become friends with composers, and they find the people that they're working with in their early films usually follow them along, and they will use them in their later bigger films. So my first piece of advice is continue finding the student directors, the people doing small films, low budget films, short films, and make relationships with them because they're going to be the ones that end up making the larger films and coming back to you. I've had work from all sorts of directions, from friends of friends, from I got work because my son was in class with the daughter of a producer, and we got to know each other, and he let me know that he had a project coming up, and I got work that way. I got work through the UCLA Extension. They would do these like network mixers between all the different programs. So you got screenwriters and directors and cinematographers and composers, and everybody would come and meet up and try to connect on projects. I would look around locally, see if there's local film festivals for to find movie makers in your area. YouTube, who knows? You could find somebody who created a cool video on YouTube and contact them, say, hey, I really like what you're doing. I would like to work with you in the future. If you've got any projects coming up, just let me know. It's, hey, Ilka, I see you there. It's one of these things. Composing for free is always going to be a hot button issue in the community because a lot of people will say, "Oh, you're devaluing what a composer does, and you're not, you're not standing up for yourself, giving yourself a price, giving yourself value." And that can be true. On the other hand, there's a lot of people who are trying to also make it in this industry, including directors, cinematographers, producers, that don't have a ton of money and would probably actually like to pay you, but they really can't. And if you pass it up, somebody else is going to come along and take that job for free. It's not ideal. It's just the way it is. And it actually is the way it is in just about every industry, in every job. If even something as plain as concrete. I used to work a little bit in construction and the concrete industry, and you'd be surprised what people will do. Construction companies or concrete companies will bid low, actually knowing they're going to lose money on creating concrete pipe just to get the job, just to make that connection. So it's not just something that happens in Hollywood. It's not just something that happens to composers. It's something that happens to everybody who wants to do something that other people also want to do. You've got to compete. And unless your skills are so much better than everybody else that somebody just looks at you and says, I need that composer regardless of the cost, and that's basically the world that John Williams lives in and Hans Zimmer lives in and all the A-listers, is that they can dictate their price because they bring a lot of other things to the table. Well, if you're like the rest of us and you're just getting into the industry, really working on your chops, trying to get them up, then you don't bring that to the table, and you got to bring other things. And it could be working for free. A good piece of advice is it should either, do something for your pocket or something for your career or something for your soul, right? You should really enjoy the project, or you should make money off of it, or you should make a really good connection and be able to further your career from it. And that's a good way to do that. So let me move on to the next question. Let's see. Can you please explain basic orchestral composition? Yeah. So, actually, you know what? I skipped a question. here. Let's see. Do you know any communities for composers to join? Well, I'm a member of the SCL, the Society for Composers and Lyricists, and if you're wanting to get into film scoring, it's really probably the best one to be. They've got a local chapter here in LA. They've got a local chapter in New York. So if you're in another state or another country, it's not going to be probably as fulfilling as you'd like it to be. You do get access to a lot of their seminars, their old seminars and stuff, but it's kind of more of a local thing. Other than that, you know, online groups, yeah, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the typical, you know, Facebook groups. You've got Orchestration Online, and you've got VI Control for a forum for tech stuff. You know, there's places all over the place. I would say, once again, just look locally. You know, you never know what you're going to find. There could be a small meetup, or start your own small meetup locally. That's a way to do it. Let me move on again. See, can you please explain basic orchestral composition? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to do a full composition here because I've got some other stuff I've got to do this morning, but I'll try to break it down as simply as I can. The process of composing the structure of your piece, right? Understanding the melody, the harmony, the general ideas that you're coming up with is exactly the same. And often I will sketch out on a 2-line piano staff, and I keep staff paper all over the house. I mean, it's literally everywhere. It's like in every room because, well, one, because my kids tend to grab my staff paper and take it all over the house and throw it everywhere. But two, I want to make sure I can, if I get an idea, I can write it down quickly, or, you know, I don't have to go hunting for paper and pencil, right? And I will sketch out my stuff as a 2-line piano sketch as much as I can. I often jump back and forth between paper and sketching in Sibelius. I've used Sibelius since I was about 13 years old or 14 years old, and I'm, you know, I just got it down that I don't have to think too much about it. And then the process of orchestration. In fact, I like to keep things broad as much as I can. So often I'll write out ideas, and if you're interested, I would listen to the podcast episode I did a few years ago on orchestration. It's episode 9. And it's just like, you know, my thoughts on it. But a great way to go about it is, once you've got your piece mapped out as a simple piano sketch, just start really big. Say, you know, start to describe how you want your piece to feel, or just general things. Like maybe you want this section to feel, you know, intimate and breathy, you know, or maybe you want the next section to feel a little bit more out front or regal, or maybe you want it to feel scary and dark. And there's a million, you know, words you could use to describe the music. But what that does is it gets your subconscious kind of working on these problems. You know, if, like I said, if I wanted to do something that's intimate and airy, I would probably maybe have divisi strings, and I would probably have maybe a solo flute playing low in its register, or maybe an alto flute, and I could write something really cool with that. If I wanted to do something a little bit more regal, I could have the strings just playing kind of simple ba 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 on the bottom, and I could have, you know, a trumpet playing a solo melody on top. And the way you start to connect those feelings with orchestral textures is by reading scores and taking note of the sounds that you like. And one of the things I've done over the years is I have an Evernote folder, which I would recommend for everybody. And it's just a folder that contains a bunch of screenshots of scores. Every time I'm listening to something and I'm like, oh wow, that's a really cool texture, I will pull it up and I will take a snapshot of it, and I'll take whatever notes I can on it to remind myself. And let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I'll try to get a screenshot in here. Bear with me. Window capture. Here we go. Okay. So hopefully you can see that here. I'll know in a second. But this is an example. This was from Corleano's Percussion Concerto. I was listening to that, and you can see the score on, I think, Issuu, which is spelled ISSUU. And hey, Pavi, I do see your comment there. I want to say hi to everybody. I feel like I've been gone for so long, and some people have been writing me like, everything okay? Yeah, everything's okay. So back to this though. So in here though, I mean, you can see I try to. Maybe there's something where I don't take a screenshot. I just write an idea on timbre or whatever. But as you go down, you'll see I've got more clippings. Let's see. This is from a sketch from Empire Strikes Back. I was like, oh, this is a really cool way to write this stuff here. Let's see what else we got. Tchaikovsky textures from his symphony, right? I think it's just a great way to quickly connect things. I also will frequently, tag it with ideas like light or pizzicato if there's certain articulations that are being used, or if certain feelings. This one right here, this opening from the Schubert String Quartet movement, or sorry, String Quartet 15. I just got to play it for a second because it's just so beautiful. Give me 1 second here. String Quartet. Oh, I should have wrote 15. Schubert String Quartet 15. Let's see. Here we go. So I think it takes a second to get there. Let me know if you can hear the music. Okay, here's the texture right here, and I just... Okay, so the point of that is, and let me go ahead and get rid of my window here because it's in the way. But the point of that is that I was listening to that string quartet, and it struck me. I was like, that is a beautiful texture. I want to remember that. So I went over to IMSLP. I found the score. I found the moment. I copied it. I took a screenshot. I threw it in my orchestral folder, and now I've got it locked in. And probably even just the process of doing that, taking the screenshot, locking it in, means that I probably won't even have to reference it. It's going to be locked in enough. I'm going to remember the sound. It's not the first time I've listened to that quartet, not the last time I'm going to listen to that quartet. So that's my process for gathering those textures. And the more you read scores, the more you take the time to really study it. I would say really slow down. Look at those 2 or 3 measures that are gripping you. Don't read the whole score. You don't have to read an entire Mahler symphony in one sitting or an entire Schubert string quartet in one sitting. Pick those 2 bars and explode them apart. Figure out what is making it work. And if I jump in here and just look at what it is, it's like, well, you've got the cello down in its low range, right? Everybody is kind of in their low range. You've got the alto, or sorry, the viola playing octaves right there like that. You've got the second violin playing up here, right? And then you've got the melody in the violin. Everybody's pianissimo, and they're all playing unmeasured tremolo except for the melody. That is, I've just described it to myself. To now, I can actually turn around. I could use a different progression. I could. Well, actually, something I just wrote a post for. It's going to post this Friday, but I've been looking at the progression from Mozart's Requiem, from the Lacrimosa. Let's see. right? And I could take that same progression and say, I'm going to mix it up with this orchestral texture, try to put them together and see how it goes. Okay, let me move on because I'm blabbing too much here. I'm not getting to enough questions. Let's see. Do you think it's bad not to be able to compose without an instrument? No, it's just a skill like any other skill that you have to learn. You're not born being able to write out music from your head without an instrument in reference. It's something that you need to work on. I recommend working on it, but don't force yourself all the time to just do that, because you'll end up, if it's something that's really difficult, you'll end up being like, I don't feel like composing because it's such hard work all the time. I think there's a lot of benefit in just improvising at the piano and writing it out, and you can exercise those muscles as well. You know, play an idea and then try to immediately write it out. Or you can also do something like try to replay it exactly how you played it 3 times or 4 times in a row to practice working on your musical memory. But no, there's nothing wrong with not being able to do that. It's a great skill to have, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. A lot of people just can't do it, and you know, that's okay. Whatever you can do to get through and finish pieces is great. Let's see. Doc G, can I show you some seconds of music? Just want to give me an idea what to do next wise. I'm really stuck. Why don't you go ahead and email me? I don't think we have time right now on the symposium to go over it, but go ahead and email it to me, and I'll take a look today and try to shoot you an email back. Let's see. This is Jose G. Hey, John, thanks so much for all your hard work and inspiration and advice. You bring us through all your different platforms. I love your teaching methods and vibe. Oh, greetings. Greetings from Brooklyn. Hello. Oh, here's the question. Let's see. I compose a lot by improvising on the piano. Most of my composing is done by ear and feeling, as I'm not great with my theory and sight reading. Any advice on orchestrating from a piano score? Well, we kind of just went over that a little bit. I would recommend start with writing big ideas, writing them out by just describing them with words as broadly as you can. Try to connect them with orchestral textures that you know. I mean, it could be as clear cut as saying Schubert, string quartet 15 texture. And I'm going to know exactly what that is because I locked it into my Evernote folder. And there's no ambiguity. You're saying, I want this to sound exactly like that. You lock that in there into your sketch by saying that in words, and now you can just move on. You can also look at the overall, the arcs of your piece. When it's in piano sketch, you can find where is the climax. And if it's a climax point, figure out what your 2D orchestration is. What do you want the big, honking part to sound like? And then work backwards from there, just like you would work backwards from a goal harmony. You've got a goal orchestration where everything adds up. Takeaways, get your big orchestration. Find a 2D chord or a 2D section from a great piece that you like, and then pull away individual orchestral chunks out of it. This instrument's playing that, and that instrument's playing that, or swap them around and try to build up to that texture by moving backwards away from it. That's another technique. And, there's also a lot to be said for just making as much progress as you can, as quickly as you can through your piece you may not have a great idea of what the orchestration should be. I like to use placeholders, right? Just adding in a generic accompaniment, strings going, right? Because from that, you can get an idea of the general feel that you want. You don't have to have all the nuance down. I remember when I was reading about Ravel, and he's got a reputation for being a slow composer. And it's not so much that he couldn't work quickly, because there's examples of him working very quickly. It's that he liked to spend a lot of time with his pieces, finding errors in voice leading, refining the textures, adding counter melodies. He let the piece develop. And the quicker you can finish and get to the end of your piece, I like to say it as you get to know your music. You get to understand what your intentions were, or you get your intentions have been clarified a lot more by the time you reach the end. And so it's a great way for you to let it once again sit in your subconscious, take a break for the evening, come back the next morning, and there's a good chance you're going to know what you want to change about your orchestral textures. Okay. Let me move on here, and let's see. I want to thank you for your amazing work. You helped me a lot in becoming a composer I am today. Do you have any plans for more courses? I've gone back and forth on this because I've personally struggled trying to master counterpoint. And I know I talked about doing a counterpoint course, but every time I sit down to do it, I'm like, I don't know if I've got this locked down in the way that I want it to be in order to really give you the value that everybody expects and deserves, and the unique angles. Now, I've got videos on counterpoint, and I talk a lot about counterpoint, and I use counterpoint constantly in my compositions. But I just don't know if I'm there yet to be able to create a full course on it. And when I sat down and I had a lot of ideas on orchestration, it was the same problem. And I think this also led to some of the overwhelm I felt and the burnout I had at the beginning of last year, or last school year, was that I put these burdens on myself. And what I realized is that when I talk to a lot of the students who've gone through the Composition 101 course, there's a desire for how to put it all together more, more examples of ways it'll come together with complete pieces. How do I personally use the techniques, and where do you go next, really? So my focus right now, and I've been doing it very seriously, is editing the videos and chopping them up, finding places where it's like, okay, this is not explained very clearly. What do I need to add here? How do I need to add on to it? What I am looking at doing, and this is kind of the first time I'm announcing it, is that in order to facilitate that, me really figuring out how do I make this course work better for everybody, is I'm going to do a guided semester. So basically, I'm going to, if you want to sign up to take the course, I'm going to have everybody going along with me. So I'm gonna watch the videos as well, because I created the course in 2014, and it's actually been quite a while since I've gone through my own course. I'm like, I probably should go back, see what I was thinking, see what I was saying. Obviously, in the last 4 years, my ideas have developed significantly, and I started working on that course, I think, in 2013. So or maybe it was even 2012 when I started the initial stuff on it. So I've developed significantly in the last 6 years as a composer. I've had just a lot more experiences, opportunities, and met a lot of people. And so, yeah, I'm going to be doing a guided semester, going through with the students. We're going to be doing weekly group lessons. I'll be going over everybody's compositions. We'll be doing, like a showcase, send me your stuff, and we'll go over as a group, how can we improve? How can we keep moving forward? My own personal stuff going on right now. I am actually getting ready to start piano lessons pretty much for the first time in my life. I took 2 or 3 piano lessons as a teenager with my high school music teacher, which was good, but it wasn't extremely thorough. Obviously, 3 lessons doesn't get you very far. And over the years, I've just taught myself, whatever I can teach myself. And with something like piano, I just know I've got a lot of bad habits that need to be corrected, and so I'm going the jazz piano route, not so much the classical, particularly because jazz is focused on improv, and I think improv is such a critical skill for any composer. I mean, you should feel comfortable just being able to. Right, just being able to noodle around like that is just, one, it's fun, but 2, it's a great way to discover new ideas. I discover all sorts of stuff all the time that doesn't necessarily have to fit within your theoretical knowledge, within your theoretical, rule book that you're playing by. Obviously, I love theory. I love understanding theory, but a lot of composition doesn't happen theory first. It happens messing around first, and then figuring out after the fact, what is it that's actually going on here? What did I mean? What did I accidentally do on top of what I meant? And that's how the real learning starts to happen. You say, I meant to do this, and things went all over the place, and I came up with this, and it's way better. So, okay. Let's see. Where can I learn to make jazz, swing, dance music similar to the 1920s? I have the idea of making a song with pop electronic with a bit of 1920s styles blended into it. Well, first off, I would say listen to a bunch of 20s music And it's not a mystery in terms of how I break down a piece. Often for scoring, I've got to pick up styles that I'm just completely unfamiliar with, and it's just a matter of listening very intently and saying, okay, what's going on? Like if we let's just real quick pull something up. Where did my iTunes go? I'll see if I can pull up maybe some Louis Armstrong, and we'll just see what we can do for a second. Just describing things.
Hello, darling.
Okay, so just the opening, obviously you can hear instrumentation. You've got typical 20s, hot jazz, Dixieland jazz style instrumentations. You got drums going on, right? Right, the harmonies are, right, they're pretty plain in terms of jazz. You're not hearing these kind of, these large extended, weird jazzy chords. It's all right. You've got a banjo, it sounds like, and the piano is just right. That kind of stuff's going on, and then,
darling, this is Louis. Darling, it's so nice to have you.
It's got a very bouncy feel, right? The bass is a right? All I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm saying, what can I pull from this and use on my own? So if I was going to take, a different piece and apply that style to it, I would first start to say, okay, well, I got the piano kind of going, right? I'm just copying it a little bit. That's kind of how you would go about that process. So whatever tunes you're thinking of as the 1920 sound, sit down and just grab a piece of paper and just start to list out what it is that you're hearing. I'm hearing a piano going chunk, chunk, chunk. I'm hearing a bass go ba-dum, 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 right? I'm hearing a banjo. I hear, it sounded like a trombone with a mute in it going, right? All kind of 20 sound. You got, obviously, Louis Armstrong is classic voice, but you got a voice in there. So that's something too. They loved these songs back then. Okay, let's see. Ilka's question, will you be doing the guided course for the 201 as well at some point? I have to see. I've got season 2 for the soap opera I'm scoring in July, and my plan is to start up the guided semester in August, so kind of coinciding with the school year. I don't know if that's a great idea. Maybe it's not. Maybe people are going to be too busy. I'll send out some emails and see when people are interested in starting it up. But yeah, very much so. I'd be interested in doing a guided course for 201. It's all about who's interested. So if you're interested, just shoot me an email. I want to know who out there is wanting to do this. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to really lock this stuff in, ask me a lot of questions. It'll be good for me to reconnect with the students and reconnect with the original material, and to further develop it and refine the courses and make something that's useful for people. So yeah. And then what software and what kinds of plugins do you use? Well, I use all sorts of stuff. My primary DAW is Digital Performer. So for film scoring, I use Digital Performer. I've got a gazillion sample library instruments. I use now I'm on to Spitfire stuff, so I've got the full Spitfire Symphonic Orchestra. I also have the Cinesamples stuff. I've got East West Quantum Leap Symphonic Orchestra. I'm super excited because I just got the new synth, or I got my synth Diva from Uhi or Yuhei. I don't know how to say their company name. I'm sorry, but Diva is a really great software synth. It just sounds so good. So I've been playing around with that a ton. And in terms of notation software, I still use Sibelius. It's still my go-to software, although with the release of Dorico 2.0, it was very exciting. They added tempo finding features, they added video, and they added the ability to manipulate CC lanes, which is the core of what I need for film scoring. So I'm excited to really dive into Dorico and learn how to use it for scoring in notation, which is what I've always wanted. Other than that, I use Band in a Box. I think Band in a Box is actually, especially for practicing, stuff like jazz, but for prototyping compositions, what's really great about Band in a Box is that you can type out the chords and it can play stuff for you in just about any style you want, including some basic classical stuff. But it's a great way to mess with chord progressions if you're not super competent at the piano. Now, I do recommend getting better at piano, and one of the pushes I'm going to have, especially with the guided semester and just from here on out, is memorizing progressions on the piano. And one I think everybody should go home and do. I gotta really get my pedal stuck to the ground better. Is just some basic ones, right? So 1, 5, 1 in all inversions, in all keys. And a great way to do it is to just cycle through the cycle of fourths. Right? And you should be able to do that with relative ease through all the keys, because 1, 5, 1, I mean, it's just like a critical sound. I would also recommend doing things like, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, learning those kind of progressions. I was going through for a while this book by Émile Durand, who was Debussy's teacher, and you can find the book online for free. It's his treatise on accompaniment. He's got a full treatise on harmony, which is all in French. I don't speak French, so it's completely useless to me pretty much. But his book on accompaniment is really cool because it has a lot of the traditional progressions that you'd find in, say, Partimenti, that are a little bit more updated with some cool, romantic type harmonies, especially as you go later in the book. And you don't really need to read about what's going on. You just need to look at it and say, okay, this is clearly a 1, 4, 1 progression here, and he's showing you in all the different inversions. And then he lists out all the different starting points for the bass. It's clear that he wants you to transpose in your head, including, in minor. You should be able to just quickly move to any key and know some of those basic progressions. So I would recommend doing that, and I think that's good homework for everybody. Just start 1, 5, 1 here, and I'm sorry, I'm having brain farts while I speak and play and think at the same time. So yeah, check that out. Another great place to get just standard progressions like that is in jazz. I mean, if you start to memorize, All the Things You Are is the name of that song, but these are standard progressions. Right? That's a 6, 2, 5, 1 in A flat major. And then the song, you do it again in another key. So jazz is a great place to start to pick up progressions like this. And in the post that you'll see this Friday on the Mozart, I go through all of that, how I like to memorize these progressions. Let's see if I could do this off the top of my head. So this is, I played it a little earlier, right? Now, I haven't sat down and locked all these in different keys, but if I were to try to transpose, let's go to A minor. So I know it goes 1, 5, 1, right? And then it drops by whole step, and it's a 5, 1. And then it drops by half step, and it's a 5, 1 again. Then it drops by whole step. Then it's a 5, 1, but it goes to minor. It goes down by step, the bass goes down by step, and it becomes a 5, 4, 2 chord. then first inversion, then up a minor third, I think. No, maybe it's a major third. I can't remember. Oh, sorry. There we go. Did it right. So that ability to take a progression, abstract it in your mind, transpose it to a new key, I'm telling you, that process of transposing will start to lock this stuff in like you won't believe. It's something, getting it into your fingers. And I've still been reading theory over the last year. I've read just some of the most interesting things, but in particular, there's a lot of great stuff coming out about improvisation, traditional classical techniques of improvising, and almost all of these papers were talking about this idea of embodied knowledge, that you have to, if you want to make this stuff more natural, more automatic, you have to take the time to get it into your fingers, whether that's piano, guitar, trumpet, whatever. I think piano is the critical link for composers. Every great composer that I look up to can play the piano really well. I mean, from obviously Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, well known for being performers. Mahler gave concerts on the piano, was considered kind of a prodigy as a child on the piano. But even, John Williams, fantastic jazz pianist, studio pianist for many years, and clearly pulls on those abilities to write quickly and efficiently. And then as you get it locked in, you don't have to think about it, right? I can literally go back to C without looking at the keyboard, right? I've played it so many times, I can kind of go up and down. Maybe I do little glances here and there, but I know how to. Let's see. You need to practice this stuff. You need to get it into your hands. So yeah, let's see. Let me do the last couple questions here, then I got to get going. Let's see. Where were we? Let's see. John, what are your thoughts on Brahms' orchestration, and what are 3 of your favorite works of his we should definitely study? I know you also love Mahler, so 3 of his as well. To be honest, I just haven't listened to a ton of Brahms stuff, or I don't listen to Brahms very frequently. I mean, I've listened to a fair amount of Brahms. In terms of orchestral stuff, obviously, his symphonies are good. Brahms, to me, often feels a little bit busy orchestrationally. But then again, I think a lot of that has to do with recording techniques, and stuff that seems to work live often can be a little bit muddy when you record it. I like, I think it's the third, it's been a while since I looked at it, but the Third Symphony, da 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 da. That's a beautiful piece. Let me just pull that up real quick. Let's see. Is it this one here? No. No. I'm not sure where it is here. I thought it was a Third Symphony. Maybe it's a different one. Somebody could help me out here. I can't remember which symphony that was from. Now, in terms of Mahler, I can speak much better about Mahler. I would highly recommend, and the first symphony I started with was the First Symphony. It's a great symphony to start with. It's got ups and downs. It's approachable harmonically, formally. It's actually quite advanced formally, but it's also not incomprehensible formally. And it's just some really great stuff in there. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Mahler 5, Mahler 6, Mahler 9. Mahler 4 is great because it's kind of him dipping into more classical language, but updated in a late 20th or early 20th century, late 19th century sound. If you're looking for song type stuff, Kindertotenlieder is an amazing song cycle, and it's orchestrated for a small orchestra, so it's a really interesting thing to look at. How did he orchestrate this with kind of more chamber size stuff? let's see. Can you do a video on your film scoring techniques and your setup and template? I can. I've talked about it a little bit on previous symposiums, but I'll see if I can put up a special video or maybe a blog post about it. I do have some blog posts on spotting sessions, which I think is one of the critical aspects of scoring is how do you lay out your stuff. And I use, let me grab it over here. I like to work visually, and this right here is just a small sheet. I don't know how to get it in focus. This is a small sheet that I lay out all the minutes of an episode. So this is one episode from the soap opera. And then everywhere that I feel that it needs music, I color it in. I just like to see visually, oh, okay, I've got about 2/3 of the show covered with music here. I can see that there's big gaps between the first, 3 cues, and then after that, it kind of starts to cover more wall to wall. So this is a big technique that I use. I take notes at the bottom describing how I'd like it to sound and feel, themes I would maybe bring back from earlier episodes. So it's, working in the DAW is one of those things that if you want to get comfortable, you need to really learn the software. So I'm not going to go over that in too much depth unless people are really interested in a digital performer lesson. But in terms of like conceptually how I think about scoring, this is one of the tools that I use. And then, like everybody else, I like to sketch out themes separate away from the computer. Not everybody else, but like a lot of people, I like to sketch out themes away from the computer by hand, get ideas down, maybe flesh them out a little bit more in Sibelius, and then I'll take that material, I'll go back to my DAW, I'll see how things are fitting. I like to jump back and forth all the time between paper, Sibelius, and digital performer. So that's just a snapshot of my method. Let's see. I play trombone, but I also play piano. I'm also interested in composing, audio engineering into jazz, neo soul funk, but also film scoring, the classical style. Would you do any videos on this? I really talk about a lot of those things on most of my videos. I don't talk a lot about engineering just because it's more it's not my skill set. It's not traditionally what I grew up doing. I am able to mix. I'm able to record things. But in terms of, do I consider myself an expert in terms of engineering? Not so much. Jazz is one of those things that I consider myself an expert in the sense of I've played in big bands. I can improvise. I read a lot of jazz scores. I listen to a ton of jazz. But I'm not an expert performer on jazz, so that kind of holds me back, which is why I'm taking lessons. Let's see, what's the name of the book on accompaniment? Let me see if I can find it. It's Emile Durand is the teacher, accompaniment, and you can find it on archive.org or here it is on IMSLP. I'll just post the link here. So there we go. I posted the link at the bottom of the chat. Let's see. I find on any other questions here. Brahms 3 third movement. Thank you. Somebody pointed that out. Let me play that just so everybody can hear. Let's see. There we go. Oh, so beautiful. So yeah, Brahms 3 third movement, great piece. Let's see. Rashad asked, did you attend music school or learn the music as you go? Also, how long did it take you to get your equipment? I've built up my equipment over many, many years. So, I mean, I moved studios here into the garage recently, and I've spent a ton of time like painting. You can see I'm building some sound absorption behind me. I got bass traps. But in terms of like instruments, you can see also in the corner here, I got saxes and trombones, clarinet, violin. I am a musical instrument hoarder. But it's taken me many years to build it up. Same with my technical, electronic equipment. So like my keyboard, my speakers. I didn't jump in and just pay $10,000 to get all this right off the bat. It's been piecemeal as I needed it. Sometimes I'll buy something and I feel like I have no idea how to use it, and it takes me a year to where I realize, oh, this is where I need to be using it. This is the way I need to use it. In particular, sample libraries and stuff can be like that. You buy something, you're all excited, and then you end up not really using it until the need comes, and you use it all the time. In terms of how I learned music, so my history in a nutshell, I started playing trumpet in 4th grade here in California. When I was 11, we moved to South Africa. I ended up playing in the state wind band there. I had a really good Austrian trumpet teacher who was very strict on me in terms of, reading, rhythm, being able to understand the music I was playing. After that, I just picked up jazz from reading through the New Reel books and getting the Jamie Aebersold jazz books on, how to improvise. And I never had a teacher teach me how to improvise, unfortunately. I did start a music degree. So I went to college I started back in 2001. But after about a year and a half, I decided to switch to history because I was going into the Army, and music in the Army weren't quite mixing, and there's a bunch of other reasons. And if you listen to my podcast, you'll get my whole backstory, and especially the ones on master. I've got a 3-part series on mastery. I talk about in one of the episodes finding a mentor and what that can look like when things don't go as you plan. Because I had all these ambitions going into college. I thought I was going to be learn composition and theory, and none of that stuff happened. The guy who was the composition teacher went on sabbatical. My advisor was an organ player, and my trumpet teacher didn't understand that I really wanted to compose. I wanted to do jazz. I didn't want to write, or I didn't want to play Mozart transcriptions for the trumpet. So things didn't work out too well there, and I never finished my degree. But the whole time, for about 10 years after that, I kept playing a lot of music. I had keyboards and guitars and trumpet. I kept writing. Actually, I didn't really write while I was in the Army. I kind of took a break until right at the end, my last year, 2011, I started writing again. And that's when I reconnected. I was like, I love this thing. And that's when I started really diving deep into the theory and talking about it and starting up Art of Composing. That's kind of where we are now. And then since then, after I moved back to California in 2014, I went through the UCLA film scoring program, which was great. What's good about a film scoring program, and I can speak about UCLA's, I don't know about other colleges. It wasn't about the technical side of composing, like, harmony and melody as much. I mean, obviously, we talked about that stuff a lot. But it was more about the technical side of scoring. So understanding, how does timing work, and how do cues work, and how do you sync your stuff up? How do you record? How do you work with studio musicians? How do you network? How do you take care of the business side of things? That's kind of what the film scoring program was about. So yeah, and then since then I've just been out, and I've been, trying to make it like everybody else. I've been getting gigs here and there, and I've also just recently signed on to be the treasurer for a choir here. So I'm venturing out to do other things within the music industry, which is to kind of bring it back to what somebody was asking earlier about finding work as a composer. Don't overlook something like this. This is a volunteer position. I'm not getting paid to be a treasurer, and all I'm going to be doing is, looking at the budget and talking it over with the people who run the choir. And, but through this, I'm probably going to meet a ton of people involved in the area, in the local music scene. And it's something to think about. Look for local ensembles, choirs, schools, community bands, anything. And there may be an opportunity for you to compose for them. And once again, you may have to do some spec work. You may have to write something for free and hand it over. So like, hey, if you're interested, I wrote this piece. I think it'd be great for your sound. You guys have the same kind of sound in your choir, and this would work for you, or whatever it is. Let's see. What's the book's website you would advise to learn classical and counterpoint improvisation? I mean, Baroque, classical, Romantic period, especially Baroque and counterpoint. Well, there's not a ton of websites out there on learning traditional classical composition, or sorry, improv. Somebody sent me a link today for the site called Tonal Tools, which looks kind of cool. I'll put the link here. and they look like they're taking the ideas of Partimenti and improv and trying to teach you how to do that at the piano. And they're using traditional techniques of figured bass. Now, I've been also trying to improve my ability to play from figured bass, or kind of more traditional, like, thorough bass, where you just have a bass note and a number, like the number 6, and you should be able to tell that means, a first inversion chord. But another great way to think about it is if you're familiar with how a lead sheet works and jazz composition, you can take a classical piece, and once again, let me get back to I'll pull up the Mozart that I was working on, if I can find it here. So you can see how I was mapping this out. Because I'm trying to... The one thing that is, I think, a little bit difficult for Partimenti nowadays is that... give me a second here. Change over this window. There we go. Let's see, hopefully... Oh, I don't know what happened. Here we go. I'm going to just throw that right in the middle. Okay. So you can see here what I did is I was like, okay, what's critical for a composer to be able to gather from this piece? And there's a couple things. One, I think the opening melody is just haunting. It's just absolutely beautiful. Plus, it's an opportunity for you to practice your alto clef reading. Right, so that's Mozart in the 1700s. That sounds like jazz right there. I can't believe it. Right? Oh, let's see. I'm sorry. I'm having to switch my my keyboard here because I don't have a full keyboard. So I put that in there because I was like, I think if you're going to learn this, you really need to learn that opening. That's literally exactly how it's written in the orchestra. It's super simple. But then over here, you get to just chord progressions, right? And that's the real melody, right? There's your augmented 6. And I wrote it just like a normal jazz lead sheet. So I added some of the lyrics there. I was kind of doing that. I added the chord progressions. I do some harmonic analysis because I think it's good to do that. It's not absolutely vital. And I think my mic's maybe a little bit too high. This is a great way to practice. You can find the voice leading patterns on here, right? So if we just take that one, right, the 1-5-1, and you can mess with that. You can practice improvising that. I took that and I just kind of mess around with it. Right? It's going to be trial and error. It's you messing around, finding things that work, finding stuff that doesn't. Yeah, so I would check out that tonal tool stuff. If you really want to get the best, it's going to be in books, though. It's going to be the book, the book by Robert Yerdingen, and I recommend listening to that podcast episode. I interview him. There's another book, Giorgio Sanguinetti's book, The Art of Partimenti, or Art of Partimento, where he talks about the rules and how you can learn those. You can see the videos by Tobias Crum, I can't remember, who is the one that teaches Alma Deutsch, or Alma Deutscher. Sorry, I'm getting all these names messed up here. Those are some good books and videos, and you can see how people are doing it. And then also just look around online to see how people are improvising. But it is important to remember that improvising was a critical aspect of a composer's trade back in the day. I mean, somebody like Bach trying out for the Kapellmeister position would be expected to be able to improvise a fugue on the spot right there from a melody that he was given. So let's see. Any advice on audiation and sight reading? Yeah, so for sight reading, the best thing I ever did as a kid, I did a couple of things. One, I had a big fake book, New Real book, and I went through and I played every melody, and I tried to, and I was on guitar at the time, I tried to play the bass note and the melody at the same time, which is not too difficult on guitar, not too difficult on piano. If you try to add the chords to it, it can get kind of complicated. But just start at the beginning and go to the end. Read through the piece. If there's a section you're really you can't figure out, try to figure it out. Maybe you got to write out the rhythm or something, but don't spend forever on it. The point is practicing your sight reading. And if you do that a little bit every day, or get one of these, collections of famous medium classical pieces, famous symphony themes written for piano, then you can really work on it. Another thing that I did, which was really good, was in high school, I was in my church band, and my church band had only lead sheets in C, and it was always in a weird key like G flat or C sharp, because it was for singers, and for some reason singers like ugly keys. I don't know why. Like their voices just match with ugly keys for some reason. So I was forced to read these really nasty sheets and then transpose, and then also try to improvise at the same time. And just when you're forced to do that, like you get thrown into the deep end, you just get better at it. So sight reading, practice your sight reading. Just find whatever music you can and play through it. There's a bunch of stuff on IMSLP for free. There's collections of classical pieces and Bach and things like that. Let's see. Fiona did ask, is the book is only available in French? Yes, it's only available in French, and I am working on I have like a little initial translation of the introduction that I did by putting the stuff into Google Translate. So it's not very good, but it was just to get the idea. I mean, if you open up the book and take a look at what is shown in the musical examples, that's the critical stuff. And the first part of the book is all, I mean, the first part is just showing you what the inversions are. And you can look up that information just about anywhere. After that, he gives you these basic chord progressions to use. And like I said, it's 1-5-1, but then you're transposing. It doesn't matter. Right? You can go all over the place, and you can change the position of your hand. That's kind of what he's getting at. Maybe there's a French listener here who would love to take the time to translate that book for us, because I think it's a gold mine of really awesome progressions, really awesome techniques for the piano. And it's a skill that was expected of composers. And I think one of the reasons composers in the past could put out so much music, it just seems like you look at a guy like Mozart, who's got hundreds of hours of music, and he died when he was in his 30s. It's because of this ability to improvise fluently at the piano in just about any key. So let's see. I always say that I'm going to end up here soon, and then there's more questions, so I feel bad leaving them because it's been a while. Let's see. Last question. Any other good podcasts out there? I already know yours, Composer Quest, The Soundtrack Show, Art of the Score. I know there's the Score podcast by the guys who did the Score documentary. I started listening to that. First episode was an interview with John Debney. That was really good. Let me see what's in my podcast playlist here. And you know what? I just realized I've had this Sibelius window open up the whole time. So what have I listened to music-wise recently? Oh, you know what? There is a YouTube channel. It's not a podcast, but it's Nare's Soul. If you haven't watched her YouTube channel, I'll find it here. I've just been really, really inspired by what she's doing. She is a Juilliard-trained pianist. She's coming to this stuff from a really cool direction. She's got the piano chops that I just crave. I wish I had that kind of ability on the piano. And her harmonic language is just great to listen to. So I would recommend watching her videos. It's very inspiring watching her techniques, how she gets creative, how she gets new ideas, how she makes things not bland and boring. So I would definitely check out Nare Sol's channel. There's the Underscore podcast. If you haven't listened to that, these the Marcato brothers, they do stuff. They go over film scores and stuff that they like. I really highly recommend listening to the ET ones. That's the one I listened to first. Really cool. You know, they talk about these kind of these cool chords that John Williams likes to use on the dominant, right? These extended jazzy chords. And once again, it comes back to that ability to improvise at the piano. I think is a critical thing that I'm really going to be pushing this next year. So yeah, I think that's it in terms of new composition stuff. There's the Meet the Composer, which is hosted by Nadia Sirota, and it's out of New York, and she does a lot of stuff with Nico Muli. I think she's in a couple, really good ensembles out there. I would highly recommend that one. Kind of extended interviews, and two, yeah, I've been looking at trying to get the podcast up and running again. But I do kind of want to change the format. I really like these long extended interviews. I think they work really well for podcasts because you get in and out of your car, you start up your player, and it just plays again, and you can finish a 3-hour episode in 5 days, and it doesn't feel like it was drudgery to sit through. It kind of goes well. So let me see if there's anything. Can you post links for the composers you're recommending? Yeah, I posted the link to Nare Sol. Let's see. Meet the Composer podcast. Here we go. Here's Meet the Composer. And then it was Underscore podcast. Where are we here? Sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth. So hopefully you can see those there. And I think that's it. I think I made it to the bottom of the questions here, so I should probably call it a day. I was happy to see everybody's still excited to listen to this and to learn composition. And once again, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for checking out the channel. And yeah, send me your questions. Let's get back into it. I want to make this a good summer for learning and improving. And I can't wait to see what happens. With my jazz piano lessons and soap opera this year. We got a little bit of a shorter time span, so I'm going to be real busy composing, but I think that's going to be factoring into the symposiums and definitely when we move into the guided semester. So there'll be a lot more about that all coming out. And by the way, I'm going to be dropping the price in the Academy. So I'm not ready to fully release everything. You'll probably be seeing some emails if you're signed up on the mailing list, but yeah, I'm excited about all of it. So yeah, Simon, I do plan on doing more of these. Thank you for posting that. And John Mortensen channel has some stuff about schema and partimenti. Thanks. We'll check it out. John Mortensen YouTube. So we'll also take a look at that. But yeah, if you got good resources, share them with the group here. Post them in the comments for the videos. So okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for showing up, and I'll see you later.